For decades, the idea of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan has been one of the world's biggest and, frankly, scariest what-ifs. But what if we moved past the what-if? Today, we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of it. We're breaking down the actual strategic plan, the blueprint, for a potential invasion, all based on a really deep dive study from the U.S. Naval War College. Okay, let's get into it. So how would this actually go down? You hear a lot about the politics, but what about the raw mechanics of it, the operational side? This isn't about if they will, it's about how they've planned to do it. We're talking logistics, military doctrine, and trying to pull off one of the hardest military operations you can possibly imagine. And just so we're all on the same page about how serious this is, the people who wrote this study, they are not mincing words. This quote from them really sets the stage. The planning, the training, the mobilization, it's all being treated as a very real possibility by military strategists. To really wrap your head around the sheer scale of this, let's just look at one number. Think about D-Day, right? The Allies stormed the beaches of Normandy against about 50,000 German defenders. Well, an invasion of Taiwan would be facing a defending force of over 450,000. That is 9 times larger. The scale is it's monumental. And that fact shapes every single part of the plan we're about to walk through. So here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at the core invasion blueprint, their official playbook. Then, we'll get into the key military units and what each of them is supposed to do. After that, we've got a really wild card, China's civilian secret weapon. And finally, we're going to look at the biggest challenges, the things that can make this whole plan fall apart. All right, let's start with the playbook itself. You know, an invasion like this wouldn't be some chaotic scramble. It would follow a very specific set of rules, what the People's Liberation Army, the PLA, calls its Amphibious doctrine. It's something they've been working on and perfecting for years. And that doctrine is built on these 6 core pillars. First, a unified command, so the Army and Navy aren't tripping over each other. Pillar 2 is huge. You have to own the skies and the seas before a single boot hits the sand. Third, use that sea control to just pummel coastal defenses with naval gunfire. Then, Pillar 4 is key. Don't spread out. Concentrate your best troops on just a few spots to overwhelm them. The goal is a fast, nonstop push inland. And last, psychological warfare. Try to break the enemy's will to fight while using precision strikes to hopefully keep the civilian population from turning completely against you. But even before all that kicks off, the very first move would probably be something they call systems destruction warfare. Think of it as the opening punch. The idea is to launch hundreds of long-range missiles to basically paralyze Taiwan. You take out their command centers, their communication, their airfields, you blind them and deafen them so that when the invasion fleet finally sets sail, Taiwan is already struggling to fight back. So who would actually be doing all this? It's really easy to picture an invasion as just, a bunch of ships and Marines. But the PLA's plan is way more complicated. It's a joint operation, and they mean it, using pretty much every branch of their military working together. Okay, let's look at how all the pieces are meant to fit together. You've got the Army's amphibious brigades hitting the beaches first, the tip of the spear. At the exact same time, you have the airborne corps dropping in behind the defenses, trying to grab airports and seaports. Helicopter units are launching lightning-fast assaults on key targets. Meanwhile, special forces, who probably snuck in days earlier, are causing chaos and targeting leadership. And of course, the Navy's own Marine Corps is right there in the mix, landing alongside the Army. It's a complex dance where every single unit has a very specific job. Now we get to what might be the most fascinating and kind of scary part of this whole plan. The PLA's military ships, on their own, are not enough to move an invasion force this big. So, their solution is to use China's huge civilian fleet as a kind of secret weapon. And I'm not talking about a theory here. These civilian ships are literally written into the invasion plans. The PLA Navy just doesn't have enough of the right kind of ships to carry hundreds of thousands of soldiers and all their gear across the strait. The bottom line is, without thousands of civilian ferries, cargo ships, and fishing boats, a full-scale invasion is probably impossible. And these ships wouldn't just be acting as giant taxis for troops. Look at all the different jobs they'd have. Yeah, logistics is number one, moving people and stuff. But they'd also be the engineers, using tugboats and dredgers to clear mines or fix up captured ports. China's enormous fishing fleet would become a massive spy network. And get this, they'd be used for deception, creating so much clutter on enemy radar that you couldn't tell a warship from a ferry. They'd even create fake targets to make defenders waste their missiles. And if you think that sounds like something out of a movie, well, check this out. This is a real Chinese nautical chart from the study. It literally shows designated training areas where civilian ships are practicing these exact military missions.
They are training civilian ferries how to land tanks on a beach. It's not a plan on paper, it's a capability they are actively rehearsing. So it's a detailed, complex plan, no doubt about it. But as we all know, a plan is one thing. The chaotic reality of war is something else entirely. The study is also very clear about the enormous hurdles the PLA would have to clear for any of this to actually work.
Yeah, the plan faces at least 5 huge challenges. First, that joint operation we talked about, getting the Army, Navy, and Air Force to work together perfectly while being shot at is incredibly hard. Second, the logistics are an absolute nightmare. Third, Mother Nature gets a vote, and the Taiwan Strait is famous for terrible weather that could stop an invasion cold. Fourth, even the PLA admits in its own writings that its training isn't always as realistic as it needs to be. And finally, the big one, a massive lack of real-world combat experience. The modern PLA has never been in a fight like this.
And this little story from the report just perfectly captures that first problem. During a training exercise, an entire Army battalion got wiped out in the simulation because it got impatient and didn't wait for the Marines to do their job first. In a simulation, that's a tough lesson. In a real invasion, that's a complete disaster.
So after all that, what's the bottom line? When you put all these pieces on the table, the incredibly detailed plan on one side and the massive challenges on the other, you're left with a very tense, very high-stakes situation. The first big takeaway is this, and there's no denying it. The PLA has a thought-out, comprehensive, and deeply integrated blueprint for invading Taiwan. The plan is real, and it is ready. But, and this is a really big but, the second takeaway is just as critical. That plan is fragile. It depends on everything going just right. It faces unbelievable challenges with logistics, coordination, and weather. And because of that, its success is absolutely not a sure thing, not by a long shot. And so that leaves us right here, with this unsettling final question. The blueprint is there. The forces are training for it. In what is maybe the most dangerous spot on the entire planet, what happens next?